They say blood has a memory, that the stones remember the cries, that the earth remembers the footsteps, and that the walls, yes, even the walls, can bleed. It was the summer of 1099. The sun hung mercilessly over the Holy Land. Dust clung to every breath, and Jerusalem stood like a mirage surrounded by death. The First Crusade, a war baptized in the name of heaven, had finally reached its climax. But what happened on that night, on that one terrible, forgotten night, was something no holy book dared to describe, something the church would bury, something even the victors tried to forget. Because the night the walls of Jerusalem bled was not just about conquest. It was about transformation, about how men became monsters, and how sacred ground was defiled not by fire or sword, but by the unholy thirst of vengeance masked as divine justice. But to understand that night, we must go back. The journey of the Crusaders was brutal from the beginning. Preachers like Peter the Hermit had stirred the masses into a frenzy, promising forgiveness of sins and eternal glory for those who took up arms. But by the time the Crusader armies reached the gates of Jerusalem, they were no longer noble warriors of Christ. They were ragged, diseased, starving shadows of the knights who left Europe 3 years before. And Jerusalem, at that time, was under the rule of the Fatimid Caliphate, not the Seljuks as the Crusaders expected. The defenders were a mix of Arab Muslims, local Christians, and even Jews who had all suffered from the chaotic shifts of power in the region. When the Crusaders first laid eyes on the city, their hearts sank. The city was well fortified. High stone walls rose from the hills, thick and ancient. Provisions were scarce. Time was running out. The dream of reclaiming the Holy Land was slipping through their bloodied fingers. And so they turned to God, or so they claimed. They fasted. They prayed. They marched barefoot around the city walls like Joshua before Jericho. But there was no divine trumpet to bring down these walls. Only desperation and siege engines. When the final assault began on July 14th, it was not strategy or valor that led the Crusaders forward. It was madness, a holy madness. They breached the city the next day. What followed has often been called a massacre. But that word does not capture what truly happened, because massacres are done with haste. What happened in Jerusalem was deliberate, a ritual, an unmaking. The Crusaders swept through the city like a plague. Men, women, children, slaughtered without mercy. The streets ran with blood. Some reports claimed it reached the ankles of the horses. Others say it reached the knees. Eyewitness accounts, like that of Raymond of Aguilers, a chaplain who was with the Crusader forces, describe how our men rode in the blood of the Saracens up to the knees of their horses. And then, almost casually, he adds that the Crusaders marched to the tomb of Christ rejoicing and singing a new song to the Lord. A new song, sung over the screams of the dying. In the Temple Mount, where Islamic worshippers had gathered for sanctuary, the killing did not stop. Accounts tell of how thousands were butchered where they stood. And then something even darker occurred. The Crusaders, drenched in blood and sweat, gathered in the holy places, not to pray, but to perform a gruesome rite. They cleansed their swords in the pools of blood. They anointed themselves with it, not symbolically, literally. One chronicler from the east, Ibn al-Qalanisi, wrote that the Franks burnt the dead in great heaps and scattered the ashes to the wind. But what he didn't write, what was whispered in the shadows, was that the Crusaders believed the blood of their enemies had become sacred, that they could be purified by it. The idea of blood as salvation, not Christ's blood, but that of the infidel, a twisted form of Eucharist, a perversion of faith. The night fell over Jerusalem, and yet the killing did not cease. Torches lit the narrow alleys. Shadows danced along the bloodied walls. Some said the screams never stopped, that they echoed through the stones, that the walls themselves began to weep. Not metaphorically. There is an obscure account, rarely cited, by a Jewish traveler who later visited the city. He described dark stains on the outer walls of Jerusalem that could not be washed away, even by rain. Locals believed the stones had absorbed the blood, that on certain nights under a moonless sky, the walls exuded a dark red moisture, like the sweating of wounds long sealed. No official record acknowledges this, but even among Crusader chroniclers, there is a strange silence surrounding that night, as if something happened, something unspeakable, that even the victors dared not describe. What is clear is that, after the massacre, the Crusaders fell into a kind of trance. They did not celebrate. They did not plunder as expected. Many simply collapsed. Some fell to their knees and began weeping, not out of remorse but something else. Fear? Shock? Revelation? Godfrey of Bouillon, the so-called defender of the Holy Sepulchre, refused to call himself king. He claimed he would not wear a crown of gold where Christ had worn a crown of thorns. But many believed the real reason was different, that in the aftermath of the massacre, something had changed in him. He became withdrawn, silent. His letters became vague, almost haunted. He would die a year later under strange circumstances. Some say poisoned, others say by illness, but there were whispers that he had seen something in the blood, that something had looked back at him from the abyss. Some modern historians dismiss this as legend, but legends often survive where truth has been buried. The night the walls of Jerusalem bled was not just a moment of extreme violence. It was the unveiling of a truth no one wanted to see, that faith, when weaponized, becomes a mirror of the very evil it seeks to destroy. The Crusaders believed they were cleansing the city. In truth, they defiled it. And the walls remember. Even today, archaeologists have uncovered strange discolorations in certain stones of the old city. Iron deposits, they say. But some researchers, in private, admit they've never seen anything quite like it. And locals, particularly elders who still speak of the old stories, will not walk near certain sections of the wall at night. They say the air feels heavier there, that shadows move when they shouldn't, that if you place your ear to the stone, you can still hear something. Not voices, not words, but a sound, like the murmur of a crowd beneath the earth, waiting. Jerusalem was not liberated that day. It was cursed. The holy city, soaked in unholy blood, stood as both triumph and warning. And the memory of that night, though distorted and half-erased, still lingers in the cracks of history. Because when walls bleed, it means they have seen too much. It means they've been forced to hold secrets no stone should ever carry. And perhaps the most terrifying thing of all is that the blood might not have come from the victims, but from the city itself.